Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back. It's Mia, and today we are discussing my spoiler-free review for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now, I am not even going to keep you in suspense here, guys. I am on the side that this was a good movie. I enjoyed myself. Now, is this Marvel's greatest movie? Absolutely not. Is it their worst movie? No, Eternal still exists. It's still out there, guys. But that's not to say this was, it's not the best, it's not the worst. Just say it's okay. I think it was just a good movie. It was an enjoyable movie. And yeah, so this movie, to put in summary, it's basically about, as spoiler-free as possible, Scott Lang and his family all get trapped in the quantum realm and they need to escape. But also, they have to evade Kang the Conqueror. How scary is that? And of course, Kang the Conqueror wants their help. They've got some great technology there. And so he's going to do whatever it takes to get his hands on that because he kind of needs that technology. So I'm going to leave it there and just go back actually to the fact that I have been checking the Rotten Tomatoes on this for a couple of days now, and it just been fluctuating like crazy. But for the most part, it always been rotten. And I think when I checked it, guys, it was at 48% rotten as far as the critic score goes. And so, you kind of have to wait for the audience score to report in. And a lot of times I do side with the critic score. Like the last time I looked at the Fantastic Beasts, the last movie that came out, and I definitely sided with the critics, whereas the audience rated it very favorably. This time, I am so very surprised to find that I just did not, I found this movie to be rather enjoyable. Now, I was also on edge about this because I was thinking back to Thor: Love and Thunder, which to me was the last Marvel movie that I really didn't like. I like Black Panther, thankfully, but Love and Thunder was a big one for me to not like, just because of how much I liked Ragnarok. And so I guess coming off of that movie, I was like, oh my goodness, Love and Thunder sucked. And now we're kicking off phase 5 with a movie that the critics are saying sucks. So that made me very cautious about this movie. And I saw a lot of critics as well complaining, or specifically complaining about some of the comedies, saying the comedy was hit or miss. It wasn't that great. And I have to say, I thoroughly disagree. And I'm going to compare this to Love and Thunder a lot. For me, Love and Thunder was one of those movies where the balance with the comedy was just way off. And I mean, we're talking about a character here who started out with a dramatic kind of Shakespeare-y tone to his movies, and then when Taika Waititi, that's when the movies started to get their comedy flair. Whereas with Ant-Man, Peyton Reed, it's always been to me a comedy series of movies, so it just felt a lot more natural in Ant-Man, but also there was just a good balance of jokes. I don't think they hit you over the head too much. It didn't, to me, feel too much like a children's movie. The way Love and Thunder felt, it just felt like the right balance, and maybe I just like this style of humor more. I really don't know, but I'm just glad that, it didn't feel too dumb, but it also didn't feel too serious. It, to me, felt like they struck just the right balance as far as Marvel movies go. And I was to be honest, the whole time I was watching this, I was this feels like an episode of Rick and Morty. It's just one long 2-hour episode of Rick and Morty, and that I really enjoyed. Now, I will say, if we're talking about comedy here, because some of these aspects have to be a little bit more comedic in their execution, whereas maybe another movie would have been a little more serious. There are some moments where, sometimes things are going to be resolved in a stupid-ish way. To me, most of those times, the stupid was justified. I don't think the plot suffered from too many, ex machina, stepping on a rake and all of a sudden the world is saved, that sort of comedy. I think it was just right. Although there were still some things where I was is that a good way for this to have been solved? It just, sometimes you're questioning it. Why is this the way that they decided to resolve this? And a lot of that was revolved around Kang. And I think because Kang is a brand new character to us in the MCU, we don't really know what his powers are. We don't really know what his strengths are. We know that he's very powerful, but this is the first time we really see that on screen, so we're not really sure. Can you fight back Kang in this way? Can he do that? Is it hard to do this against Kang? Is it easy to do this against Kang? So it's kind of you're settling in and finding out what he can do. So yeah, there are some moments where you're Okay, I guess that's how that works, but I mean, for the most part, there weren't too many of those moments for me. All right, going down the other list of complaints that I've seen some people talk about the CGI in this film, and when I was watching it, like in a couple of the clips, like on YouTube, I was definitely kind of thrown off at first. I was like, ooh, yeah, this is really, really bad. I don't know what kind of voodoo magic they worked, but eventually as the movie went on, it just looked normal to me. It was a bit of a, more of a CGI fest than normal, especially just given the setting. It was a lot more sci-fi than a lot of the Marvel movies that we've come to see. But it didn't feel like so low budget that, or like under polished that it looked like Shark Boy and Lava Girl. I think, there's some moments where you're like, oh, it's like Shark Boy and Lava Girl, isn't it? But for the most part, I thought the CGI was fine. Given everything that we know about Marvel and their CGI artists, I think it was just okay. I don't think it was terrible. And then kind of addressing one of the final sort of complaints that I've seen about this film was just kind of like being like, oh, this was just a movie to set up the next movie. This is just, really, it was all just set up. And I'm like, okay, this is where I'm starting to have a problem with this type of language or this type of talk, because for the longest, we've had a couple of years with Phase 4 where we ended the whole arc with Thanos, and so we're kind of starting sort of fresh here, and a lot of people had just been feeling like the MCU feels very disconnected. I've talked about this in my Phase 4 review, and it's like, yeah, it feels very disconnected because you'll be looking at one thing or one movie and thinking it will connect to this, and then it actually doesn't, and then they go off in one direction, they go off in the other. This one, I will say, finally is not a departure from everything that we've been going through, the multiverse saga, all that stuff that we thought was going to be happening. It actually continues in this film, and so I'm pretty thankful that finally we've got some connectivity going on within the MCU again, even with this kind of arbitrary Phase 5. And so at the end of the day, I like that it moves the story forward, and we still get an adventure with Scott Lang, right? It's like, okay, I was gonna call him Scott Kang. Oh, do you see how that's very, very tricky? So yeah, it's right, Scott Lang and his family, Ant-Man, they all get sucked in the quantum realm, and he has to figure out how to get out of there, and maybe that opens up a whole can of worms with Kang. That's the story, and I'm glad that it gives Ant-Man something to do, and it pushes the agenda for the story that MCU needs to tell. And then while we're talking about Kang, my goodness, what a huge, huge selling point Kang is in this film. Just Jonathan Majors is just like such a huge, big, in-demand star now. It's kind of like you just have to, like, I want to go see Creed 3 just for Jonathan Majors. I mean, first two movies are okay, whatever, but I'm like, oh, Jonathan Majors in this, I gotta go see it. So it's awesome that he has this huge pull, and he really has not been in a ton of stuff. So just for him to come into this role as Kang, and I think he did it really well. I feel like with his performance, kind of like with He Who Remains, there's something that I can't put my finger on where maybe it's a little off or he has something to refine, but I think the more that he plays this role, the more that he steps into it, he's really making it his own, and that's what I like. It's a really unique character. I think the more Kang that we get, hopefully there'll be a lot more Kang we'll see down the line. I think that'll be exciting. But yeah, we do get some good Kang lore in this, as far as, like I said, pushing the envelope, leading us up to Kang Dynasty, and even just kind of some of the plot lines in his story. I didn't really expect any of those things to happen, so I'm excited for the storytelling, guys. They pushed this one in a good direction. All right, some random things that I liked. Cassie, her character was pretty decent. I thought she was going to be annoying, but kind of like Kate Bishop, she grew on me by the end. There were some other surprise characters that I really came to enjoy. One of those being Bill Murray's character. I thought he was pretty decent. I don't know if Bill Murray, how canceled he is, but I'll say kind of remotely whatever, independent of him being canceled, it was a decent character that they wrote and how he played it. And then Paul Rudd was awesome, as always. Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp, pretty underrated. I never give her enough credit. And Hank and Janet, they got a lot to do. Those characters weren't wasted. I'm glad that they kind of all filled a role in this, and it worked out really well. So yeah, what a fun, to me, sci-fi comedy movie. I think Kang worked really well in this. Maybe a few questionable things here or there, but ultimately I enjoyed myself, and I gotta give this movie a B+. I think that's a fair rating for this. So guys, I am going to end the discussion here. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this discussion. Leave me a spoiler-free comment down below about what you enjoyed about the movie or didn't enjoy. It's cool. If you want to leave me a spoiler comment, hold on to those. I will have a spoiler video coming out hopefully within the next day or two with special guest, my BFF Natalie. She wanted to come back to discuss spoilers for Ant-Man Quantumania, so I shall have her back on the channel promptly, and we'll be discussing all sorts of spoilers. It'll be fun. Subscribe so you know when that video comes out, and of course we'll be reviewing all sorts of Marvel news and other good stuff like that. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.